Hey, Dan, how about we go to that Japanese restaurant I want to try?
But my mom's expecting me home for dinner.
Dan awkwardly replied. Again? I rose an eyebrow. Predictably, his next move was taking out his phone and calling Mommy Dearest.
Mom says eating out is very expensive. It's your idea, so you're paying, okay?
Excuse me? Did I mishear him? Unbelievable. So, through gritted teeth, I said, Forget it. I'm going home. Then I left him standing there with a stupid look on his face. Yep, that idiot was my boyfriend, Dan. He's in his 20s, but every conversation is still, my mom this and my mom that. It's so exhausting. At first, I thought I'd found a manly, impeccable man to rely on. Instead, it just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover, y'all. It all started with me coming back to the country, and it was hard finding my feet here again. Also, I hadn't had a boyfriend for, let's say, a long time. I wasn't that desperate, but my auntie insisted on matchmaking me with this cute guy. I thought, why not? First impressions, Dan was fine. He'd just graduated from a prestigious college, and he seemed so gentle and kind. We spent a good time chit-chatting, so yeah, after that we started dating. It was swell at first, but then the abnormal details about him began to surface. We arranged a date at mine once. The plan was to cook a meal together, then relax watching a movie. But as soon as he arrived, he walked straight over to the couch and started watching TV without any helpful intention. I dragged him into the kitchen, passed him a carrot and the peeler. He looked confused, then stuttered,
But I don't know how.
I tried to show him, but despite explaining it in great detail, Dan still fumbled to peel one lousy carrot. Then, yep, you guessed it, at one point he called his mom. Then he told me,
My mom says the kitchen is a very dangerous place. I could cut or burn myself. We could go back to my place. My mom can do the cooking.
I glared at his arms akimbo.
Or we can eat out,
Dan mumbled.
Only if it's on you, Claire. It's not my fault.
I growled while shaking my head. Fine, then I'm not coming with you. Then I pushed him out and slammed the door shut behind him. What the hell just happened? Still, I told myself that maybe he was just scared, since he has never cooked before. One time we were in a clothes shop, and I spotted this shirt that I knew would suit him. It wasn't his usual style, but I insisted he tried it on, and ooh, he looked so good in it. Dan seemed to like it too, as he admired himself in the mirror, then said,
It does look nice. But wait, can you please take a photo so I can send it to my mom? Well, she's the one who buys all my clothes, so...
What? So now he needed approval from his mom before he bought anything? Jeez. Anyway, I took a couple of photos and he sent them to his mom. They exchanged messages, then he turned to me and said,
Okay, Mom says you can buy me it.
Me? My eyes widened.
Yeah, Mom says you chose it, so you should buy it for me.
Wait, what? I literally froze for seconds. Speechless, I could only glare at him before I found the means to leave.
Claire, what's wrong?
Dan chased after me, but I ignored him. Okay, I admit that after a few dates, it was easy to figure out he was a total mommy's boy. But I told myself that it was sweet he loved his mom so much, and I never expected it to be that extreme. After that, I used the silent treatment on him, but he wouldn't quit bugging me. Then, he told me he wanted to take me out to my favorite restaurant as a birthday treat. Ooh, this sounded great! Perhaps he'd realized something and wanted to make it up for me. We were holding hands and walking toward the restaurant when we passed by a shoe store, and in the window display were the perfect pair of boots. Well, I'm a girl, and it was my birthday. I pulled Dan's arm. Danny, look! I pointed at the boots. I want those. I grinned from ear to ear.
Okay,
Dan replied blandly. My smile faded. I mean, they'd make the best birthday present. Ugh, since when did a girl like me have to ask for a gift?
Why?
Dan shrugged.
You like them. I don't.
My face reddened with anger. But it's my birthday. Dan scratched his head and forced a smile.
Sorry, babe. Last night I spent my allowance on some new games, so I'm broke now.
Pfft, I sneered. Why don't you ask your mom? And he unexpectedly went mad.
Hey, you're obviously the wealthier one. How come you keep asking me to buy you stuff?
Enough! I stopped dead. I have never, ever dated anyone as awful as you before. You're a grown-ass man, so stop running to your mommy every time you forget how to turn the kettle on or stub your toe. And why on earth do you still get an allowance at your age? It's over. Then I turned to leave without letting him have the last word. So freaking unreal. Trust me, to arrive back in the country and end up straight into this bizarre mommy's boy circumstance. But yeah, at least I was finally free of him now. It's been a few weeks since then, but just the thought of Dan still made me so mad. Ugh, I needed to get out of here and live a little. So I called my close friend Philip and arranged to meet him and some of my trusted guy friends at a bar.
Cheer up, little girl, he teased. I know what will put a smile on your face. Our gaming group found this hilarious player. All we have to do is throw a few compliments his way, and he buys us all new items. Then, whenever we go out partying after a victory, this noob also pays for it all. What an ego.
I mocked, Congrats, bros. Wish my ex-date was also that generous. Then I rolled my eyes. He never spent a cent. Well, at least not without asking his mom for permission first. Philip laughed with a surprise.
Hey, this noob's the same. He brags that despite being broke, his mom came up with the idea of matching him with rich girls so he can be covered.
Hold up. That didn't sound right. I had a real bad feeling about this. Then Philip pointed across the bar and said,
Oh, speak of the devil,
and patted my back. A chill ran down my spine as I took a deep inhale of breath and turned to see it was Dan. And oh, he had a new girlfriend already. I quickly made up some excuse and bailed before they saw me. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Dan's new girlfriend. Whatever Dan and his mom were doing was no less than scamming. So I arranged to meet up with Philip at a diner, and I confided in him about my history with Dan and how I was concerned about his new girlfriend. Philip offered to help and said he would try and find out more information. A few days later, he reported back with his findings. Turns out, Dan and his mom had learned the Claire lesson, so this time with his new girlfriend, Lizzie, they were playing it differently. Dan, as his mom had ordered, took some sensitive photos of Lizzie, and now every time she refused to pay for something, he threatened to post them online. OMG! This made me feel so sick. This poor girl was trapped and were sucked dry of all her money. This was extortion, and I was going to put a stop to it. It didn't take long for me to find Lizzie online. I then dropped her a message saying I wanted to help, and we arranged to meet up in person. After hearing me say that I knew the truth, Lizzie burst into tears. I can't let those pictures get out, so I have to keep on being his girlfriend and pay for everything. She rubbed the tears off her cheeks. I had to borrow money, and now the interest means I'm in thousands of dollars worth of debt, and I still have no guts to speak out. Let's put an end to this. I slammed my fist on the table. Be brave, Lizzie. I've got your back. The day after Philip and I went with Lizzie to tell her parents, it was bad. Her mom started blubbering and tried to cover her face while her dad went furious.
No one does this to my little girl and gets away with it,
Philip replied.
Too right. The bad guys are going down.
We spent the rest of the day gathering evidence, including all of the threatening messages Dan had sent her and the receipts she'd kept from the extortionate purchases he'd forced her to make for him. That was when Lizzie received a message from Dan.
There's this expensive restaurant I want to go to. Babe, take me there tonight or else. Love you, X.
Lizzie replied that she agreed. Then, knowing Dan was out, we went around to his house. We confronted Dan's mom as soon as she let us inside. She was frightened and eventually confessed that she didn't have a job and it was Dan's dad who provided for them. As a result, she spoiled Dan so badly that it annoyed his dad, so he left. Then she sadly blurted out, He didn't say a word to me. He just left Dan a note that said, Take care of yourself and your mom.
I knew Dan would be miserable without his luxuries, so I told him to find a rich girlfriend to spoil him, and this time," she looked from me to Lizzie, "to make sure she would be too trapped to ever leave." There was a knock at the door. She looked at us awkwardly before she went to answer it. We followed her, and that was when we saw 2 cops arresting her. She bursted into tears as they took her away. I guess she thought she was a devoted mother who was doing right by her son, when, in truth, she went about it in totally the wrong way. She ended up going to jail, and her house was sold to pay off Lizzie's debts. As for Mommy's boy Dan, as an accomplice, he ended up doing community restitution. Hey, this would probably do him some good, as he'd finally learn what a day's hard work actually felt like. Thankfully, Lizzie gradually got over this traumatizing event and was ready to start dating again. With Philip. About me, well, I'm still single, but I don't feel lonely anymore, as I have awesome friends. Besides, this way I have no guys bumming money off me.
I was sitting in the reception with an ice pack pressed to my head, waiting for my mom to come pick me up. Ugh, that stupid rogue ball during PE! Oh, there she was, glamorous as always. She rushed over and hugged me, checking if I was okay. Then she guided me out of there and along the hallway. A group of teenage boys stopped dead and stared open-mouthed as we walked by. One even wolf whistled. Even my math teacher, who was walking out of his classroom, started readjusting his tie and waved over at us. No, those reactions weren't for me. They were for my mom. She's just too beautiful to ever be fazed by how men act around her. On the way back home, I got a message from my bestie, Minnie. I bet men would all compete to win a date with your mom. She was like a goddess earlier. I giggled to myself. The thought of a bunch of adult men competing to win my mom's affection amused me. I couldn't understand why my mom was still single. She's gorgeous, successful, and a really kind person. And I guessed she'd enjoy having a man about the place, right? Okay, so Minnie wasn't being serious, but the more I pondered on it, the better the idea became. So I messaged her back. Tell me more about that contest idea of yours. Then one time, when my mom was away on a business trip, I invited Minnie around. We spent all evening posting about the auditions online and handing flyers out around town. Soon, the applications came flooding in. Oh boy, some were handsome, but some, they were so not. Delete, definitely. We got everything ready to spend hours sifting through all the applicants. Gotta be strict, 'cause the chosen one had to be perfect like Prince Paris, to match with a woman like my mom, whose name is actually Helen. Finally, we whittled them down to a top 10 list, and we invited them along to round 1. Fitness is important, right? Well, at least that's what Minnie says. So we set up an assault course at the local park. All the guys showed up, including Mr. Swanson, my gym teacher. Uh-oh, awkward. But hey, I suppose he was good-looking and a physically strong man. Firstly, they had to run a complete lap of the field, as stamina was important. Then they had to lift 120 pounds of weights, equal to my mom's weight. She sure needed a man who could lift her over their shoulder like they do in the movies. OMG. Watching them warming up was hilarious. One man showed up in this Lycra one-piece and started doing jumping jacks, and another guy was doing some weird karate moves. All of them completed the running section. Well, just about. But some of them struggled to lift the weights, including Mr. Swanson, who had turned bright red and was groaning. Minnie and I covered our mouths to hold back our laughs. Farewell, Mr. Swanson. That was for being mean to us in gym class. Finishing round 1, we eliminated 3 men. Too bad, as they were handsome. On to round 2. It's not all about brawn. Brains are important too. That was why Minnie and I spent 2 days noting down all the questions for our Who Wants to Be My Mom's Boyfriend quiz round. My mom deserves a man who knows everything. We set out a row of kid-sized chairs in the backyard. Then we walked along the line and fired questions at them. Suddenly, one man stood up and furiously said to the others, Why are we letting some kids test us like this?" Then stormed off. Minnie whispered, "Not surprising, really." I saw him scratching his head at the other questions. We then eliminated those with the lowest score, leaving just 5 potentials to go through to round 3. That night, I was about to grab something to eat, and I saw my mom standing in the kitchen. She was back earlier than I thought. She was looking down at the pile of profiles on the table with in and out stamps on them. Confused, she asked me, "Zara, what is the meaning of this?" "Mom, we think you've been lonely for a long time, so Minnie and I are doing a contest to find you a man." I gave my best puppy-eyed look. "Actually, tomorrow is round 3. It'd be perfect if you could join us for the interview. Please?" Mom glared at me and shook her head. But I kept insisting until she sighed and said, "Fine, I'll come." I howled with joy and hugged her. Bring on round 3, the interview stage. Minnie and I asked the questions while Mom, Queen Helen, watched from her throne. The first one, Tyler, waved over at Mom and said, "Helen, do you recognize me?" My mom just smiled politely. Turned out, Tyler had a big crush on my mom since they were both in high school. Then when Minnie asked him to show us his talent, he ignored her and said to Mom, "Oh, Helen, I've never stopped loving you. You remember back then when we—" I shouted out, interrupting him. "Not impressive enough. Next!" The second one stepped in. Simon. Ooh, he was wearing a suit and seemed like a gentleman.
"Maybe you don't recognize me,"
Simon spoke up. My mom's smile disappeared.
"I'm Simon, the head of the engineering department in our company."
Simon must have had a crush on my mom for a long time, but she sure didn't even know he existed. His talent performance was to help fix 2 faulty computers in my house. Useful, but honestly, it wasn't rocking enough. Plus, him being my mom's colleague was awkward. Duh! As soon as the third one, James, walked in, Mom sat up with a surprise. "Helen, I miss you so much," he sincerely said. Mom immediately motioned me to eliminate him, then got up and went inside. It was revealed that James was her ex-boyfriend from their college days. Okay, creep. Oh well, 2 guys left. The next one was so dreamy. He looked like he belonged in a boy band. Minnie and I clasped hands excitedly.
"Hi, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you, ladies."
Daniel's smile totally melted Minnie and I.
"I don't know if you ladies know, but I live on this street."
Seriously? How did I not know a handsome neighbor like this? He then took out his guitar and played a song. OMG, this guy deserves straight A's. But he was only 21 years old. That was way younger than my mom. Andy was the last one of all. Very handsome and sweet. For his talent, he'd make us cupcakes.
"These lovely little ones are specially made for you, lovely ladies."
He smiled. Oh, how charming. In the end, Minnie and I sat together and discussed our options. Well, the result was quite obvious. I excitedly announced, "We've made our decision. My new daddy, the chosen Prince Paris to my mom Helen, the champion is Andy!" He looked chuffed and grinned over at my mom. Still, my mom maintained that polite smile and remained silent. Yay! This was great! I finally had a father. Moreover, this one makes awesome food. I couldn't wait for their first date. Eek! Now let me tell you, the date went amazingly. Andy took my mom and I to this fancy restaurant in town. He pulled the chairs out for us, ordered food he thought we'd like. Then he started serving us the coolest stories ever. He really is a gentleman. If I had a boyfriend, I would want one like him. After we finished, I crossed the street to buy ice cream and caught them hugging. Perfect! Looked like things went well. Oh, Andy! I could already imagine the life where he was family. That night, Mom sat down next to me while I was texting and watching TV.
"Zara, I'm glad to see you had fun these past few days."
I hummed, still texting.
"But did it ever cross your mind that what you did was for you and not for me?"
Excuse me? I worked hard to make her happy, and she could say that to me? I took my eyes off the phone and stared at her. Sweetie, you only picked the man you liked the best. It's your choice, not mine. I appreciate what you did, but relationships are not that simple. I tearfully raised my phone and shook it, saying that I already invited Andy over at the weekend to teach me how to cook. Mom smiled. No problem. Andy and I already talked and decided to stay friends. So this weekend's plan remains the same. I lowered my head and apologized to her. Mom was right. I'd picked my favorite without considering her feelings. But yeah, it wasn't all bad, as after that, Andy kept coming over most weekends. Took me to go buy groceries with him, and then cooked for us. He taught me how to cook and bake, and we even chatted about the goofy boys at my school.
Seriously, if that Richard wants a chance with a pretty girl like ours, Zara, then he should be stronger,
Andy said, while his hands were still cooking gracefully. Yeah, Richard. Burn! Speaking of being burnt, ouch! Yes, it was me who had just burnt myself in the oven thinking about all this. Andy rushed over, guided my hand over to the faucet, and ran it under cold water. Oh, geez. He was so caring and thoughtful. Unlike those childish guys my age. Soon it was my sweet 16th. And of course, Andy was the chef for dinner. Mom and Minnie just had to light up the birthday candles. Then, as I watched Andy through the candlelight, I knew I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I was in love with him. I spent days planning for the best confession to him. Only, before I could tell him how I felt, Mom told me, Andy just called me and said he'd been offered the head chef job in New York. He's leaving next week. What? No! Why? It was Andy, the first love of my life. That was so unfair. We didn't get any chance to see him until the day he boarded. Mom and I went to the airport to see him off. I couldn't bear watching him go, so I glued my eyes on the floor while he was still excitedly chatting with my mom.
Zara, use what I taught you to take good care of your mother, okay?
Andy winked and patted my head. I couldn't help myself any longer. I burst into tears, hugged him, and sobbed out, Andy, I love you. Please don't go. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. For a moment, the whole airport, including my mom, was stunned. All eyes were on me. Andy immediately pushed me away, clearing his throat, and said,
Zara, you're a lovely, pretty, sweet girl. You will find a suitable boyfriend.
Then he turned to Mom.
Best wishes to you both. Bye, Helen. Bye, Zara.
And I watched him walk away with tears streaming down on my face. Well, it's been 6 months since then, and I eventually realized that my feelings for Andy were just a teenage confusion. I did love him, yes, but it was more like admiring and respecting him as a father figure. Anyway, I do have a new dad now, but it was my beloved Mom's choice. His name is Harris, and he might not be as good a cook as Andy, but he's a nice guy, and he makes her happy. And of course, we still keep in touch with Andy. Both his career and his love life are doing really well in the Big Apple. I've learned my lesson. Life's full of choices, some good and some not so good. But sometimes, however much we want to, we can't make choices for other people. Instead, we just have to take a deep breath and let them make their own. High school has started, and it's going pretty well. I'm currently seeing this very cute guy in math class. Guys my age are not that bad, to be honest. Minnie's not so bad on herself either, as she's now dating that musician Daniel and enjoys touring around with him whenever he plays at concerts. What a happily fulfilled ending for everyone, isn't it? Ouch! My head felt like it had been hit with a brick. Why was the room so bright? And what were those monotonous beeping sounds? Was this a hospital? I used up all my strength to pull myself into a sitting position. Then a nurse walked into the room. Why am I here? I stuttered out in confusion. She smiled over at me and replied, Oh, you're awake. What a miracle! Both you and your baby are fine now. Huh? What on earth was she talking about? My look must have said it all, as her smile dropped. Honey, you were in an accident and lost a lot of blood. You've been in a coma for the last month. And as you're pregnant, there was a worry that both of you wouldn't make it. But it's all okay now. What? I've been asleep for a whole month? Concerned, I asked her. My parents, where are they? Oh, they're so busy, so they asked us to take care of you, she said as she fluffed out my pillows. Yeah, that sounds about right, as my parents were always busy. They hated wasting time, on me especially. I put my hand on my swollen stomach and tried to recall the accident, but why couldn't I remember it? Come to think of it, I didn't even remember who the daddy was. A sharp pain shot through my head, so I clutched it with both hands. Then I cried out to the nurse, "Why don't I remember anything?" Seeing this, the nurse hurried off to find a doctor. Tests were carried out, and guess what? Turns out I have short-term memory loss. The following days on my sickbed, I had nothing to do but think. Finally, a memory came to me. It was me and my bestie, Cecilia. There was Christmas music playing, and we giggled as we prepared wasabi-covered cookies to trick our friends. Now it's summer already? Ugh! So that meant I'd already graduated. Suddenly I heard footsteps. It was Cecilia! In the doorway with a huge bouquet of sunflowers. I can't even begin to explain how good it felt to see her. We hugged for like 100 times. Then, unable to contain my patience, I eagerly jumped into the question. Now, please tell me everything. Why was I in an accident? And who's the baby's daddy? I mean, she's my bestie, so if anyone knew anything, I figured it'd be her, right? But to my dismay, she just shook her head. Sorry, Dora. I don't know anything about the accident. But, the dad's probably Louis. I spluttered out in surprise. What? Louis, as in the Star Wars geek from math class? So, turns out Louis and I have been in love for a while. She also said she'd been shocked at first when a rebellious girl like me fell for a straight-A student like him. Louis. Really? Me and Louis. If so, then why hasn't he visited me? Seeing how dumbfounded I looked, Cecilia continued. Look, I think you should go find Louis and sort this out. So, as soon as I was discharged from the hospital, I went around to Louis's house. He answered the door and gave me this dirty look. What do you want? We're through, like ages ago. Then he slammed the door in my face. This was confusing and annoying. He's the reason I can't get into my favorite pants. He needs to man up. So I went back to his house the next day, adamant I would have answers. Only his mom answered the door and said he was at college. I drove there and spotted him walking across campus. Fuming, I charged up to him and grabbed his arm. Louis, if you walk away from me again, I swear I will scream. He looked super uncomfortable, but had no choice but to follow me to a nearby coffee house. At first, the silence was awkward. I just couldn't stop staring at the gross shirt he was wearing. What did I ever see in this guy? But then he spoke up. Talk already. I have an important assignment due tomorrow. I slammed my fists onto the table and yelled out, I'm pregnant, and it's yours. What? Impossible. His eyes popped. Oh, so you think you can just shirk your responsibilities by some words like that? How many months are you? Well, Louis, I'm 3 months pregnant. He let out a sigh of relief. Now that's clear. We broke up 4 months ago. It's definitely not mine. Must be Kai's. Kai? Who's Kai? I was seriously confused. Had he made up this guy just to get off the hook? This is just typical of you. He snarled at me. Kai is the biker dude you cheated on me with. After that, He gulped back his drink, then growled out, "Goodbye, Dora," then left. Oh boy, this was a lot to take in. Didn't know what to do. I sent Cecilia a message asking if she was free to talk, and the okay message from her arrived within a minute. When I arrived at her house, I saw a man leaving on his bike. So as soon as she answered the door, I winked at her. "Who is that guy? Don't tell me he's your new BF." Cecilia gave me a sheepish look. "Nah, just an acquaintance." Then she quickly pulled me inside. "So, what happened with Louis? I want to know everything." Dropping myself on the couch, I sighed and told her all about my not-so-pleasant encounter with my ex. Wow, he's such a jerk. "Cecilia, do you think I need to go see this Kai? Maybe he's the father." "No!" She interrupted me. "I mean, you barely know the guy." I raised my eyebrow. "Do you know him?" Cecilia looked like a rabbit caught in headlights. Okay, this was odd. Was she hiding something? I was about to press her for more information when suddenly we heard the door open. "Oops, I forgot my phone." A cute guy in bike leathers walked in. Was he the guy I'd just seen leaving? Then he gave me this puzzled look. "Dora, huh? Why aren't you in Italy?" I must have been giving him a funny look, as he rubbed his head, then continued. "How could you just leave without saying a word?" "I'm sorry, do you know me?" He looked puzzled. "Huh? What are you saying? It's me, Kai." I froze, and my heart was about to break free from my chest. "Kai? You're Kai? The father of my baby?" Kai glared at me. "What baby? What are you talking about?" None of this made sense to me either, so I just blurted out, there was an accident, and now I'm suffering from memory loss. I can't remember anything. Well, anything that happened after last Christmas. And, yeah, I'm also pregnant." As soon as I finished speaking, Kai turned to look at Cecilia, who was nervously chewing on her nails. "Cecilia, why did you tell me that Dora was studying in Italy?" She pleaded out. "Kai, please. I just don't want you to be caught up in her mess. You deserve better than this. Than her." What? So Cecilia had been lying to me all along, while she actually knew who the father was? Gosh, what kind of friend is that? I was about to scream at her, then Kai said, "Anyway, Dora, I'm sorry, but the baby can't be mine, as we've only kissed and nothing more." The room started spinning. I rushed outside. I needed some time alone to process this. Honestly, it felt like the whole world was against me. My memory had failed me, my parents didn't care, my best friend had betrayed me, and now I had no recollection of who my baby's father was. What a tragic mess I was. I arrived home in the worst mood possible. But my parents were still too busy on their laptops to notice it. In a cold tone, Mom just said, "Have you figured out who's the father yet?" I silently shook my head. Dad snorted. "God, all you use your head for is a hat rack or what? You got yourself in this, so just go solve it yourself." Ugh, why did they talk as if they ever cared to help me? Please, I've always solved things on my own. Frustrated, I stormed right off to my room. I was sitting by the window, staring out into the void, when my phone beeped. It was Cecilia. Just the thought of her drove me mad, so much that I flung the phone onto the floor without even checking the text. Then came another beep, so I bent down to pick it up, when suddenly I saw something poking out under my bed. It was a lighter with the name Stanley engraved in it. Hang on. Stanley. That did ring some bells. I remember now. Louis broke up with me 4 months ago. But not because of Kai. No, it was because he was going to a prestigious college, and he thought my carefree attitude would cramp his style. Embracing my new single life, I drove to Key West Island and partied hard for a few days. And that's when I met Stanley at a bar. So he was the father. But now what? I mean, I had no way of contacting him. But even if I could find him, then what? I didn't love him. I didn't even know the guy. And I didn't want to be attached to him just for the baby. And when I came back to town, I grew closer to Kai. Only Cecilia didn't like this. So she confronted me at school and insisted that I'd stolen her man. I rolled my eyes and told her, "You're ridiculous. Kai doesn't even like you. He likes me." The next thing I remembered was firm hands pressing against my back, and then I slipped and fell down the stairs. And the rest is history. Ugh! Cecilia was such a heartless monster! Her jealous rage could have killed me and my baby. I patted my belly. Thank God we were both okay. I just needed to figure out what I was going to do now. So, after many days of thinking, I decided what I'm going to do. I want to be a single mother. Hey, I know I can do this. There's no way I'll be as bad as my parents are, which is why I'm here looking for some books on parenting. Ugh, why do they put these books so high up? It's so inconsiderate. Right on cue, someone came to my rescue, reached up, and grabbed the book I wanted, then passed it to me. I was about to thank this kind-hearted Samaritan when, hang on, Kai! I put the book down and hurried out of there without saying a word. He shouted after me, but I didn't look back. I just didn't want to be dragged into this drama between Kai and Cecilia. Being through one coma was enough. The next day, I was scrolling through a baby name site when Mum shouted that there was someone at the door for me. I went downstairs to see Kai, standing there with heavy bags in both hands. He gave a coy look and said, "This is for you. And the baby." This made me feel uneasy. I mean, I felt so bad for him. Seeing my reaction, he continued, "I should have told you how I felt from the beginning, and then things would have been different. I like you. I mean, I really do. I love you, Dora, and I want to raise this baby with you." I couldn't believe Kai still loved me, even when I'm carrying another man's baby. He's willing to welcome this baby with all his heart. In that case, I suppose you better come in. I smiled at him while holding the door open. Okay, so sometimes life likes to throw crazy surprises at you. But hey, they make sure things are more interesting. I'm sure it won't shock you to learn that I don't talk to Cecilia or Louis anymore. Poof, those losers don't deserve me. As for Kai, we now live together, and we can't wait for the baby to arrive. But tough luck, Kai, as there's no way we're calling them Kai Jr. I entered the apartment to see 4 sets of eyes gawping at me. Hang on, I know Ned and Philip from my math class, and the girl currently giving me a snooty look while twirling her hair around her finger was Jessica. Well, I didn't actually know her, but her wealthy and snobbish reputation preceded her. Then lastly was that emo kid. What was his name again? Deciding to break the uncomfortable silence, I said, "Oh, hey, so guess you guys are also in detention?" No one replied, though they surely heard me. Whoa, okay. This atmosphere was tense, and I thought I'd always been the awkward one. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm being made to do this weird detention. All I did was accidentally and poorly throw the dodgeball in the gym teacher's face. Then, when I was about to apologize, my tongue slipped. But, aren't you supposed to be the toughest since you're the gym teacher? I mumbled. Naturally, she was livid, so I ended up in the principal's office, and he handed me a piece of paper with an apartment address on it and said, "Go here for your detention. You'll stay here until you've learned your lesson." Huh? What type of unspecific instructions were those? Before I could ask him any more, he shooed me out of his office. Now, here I am in this random apartment with these untalkative kids. As I looked at them, I couldn't help but wonder what they'd done to end up here, especially when Ned was an excellent student. Did he make the wrong move in the chess club or something? We continued the whole staring at each other in silence routine. But then the door burst open and stormed in Gwen, our school's resident carefree tomboy. She sneered out, "Good evening, babies." Great! Now I was stuck sharing a living space with a girl renowned for playing pranks such as toilet papering the principal's car and filling the biology lab with live frogs. But seriously, how were we at her truancy level? Let's see who we have here. Gwen rubbed her hands as she walked around and stared at us. Princess Jessica? Oof, how come? She raised an eyebrow and grinned sarcastically. Just sit down and shut up. Gwen gave him a dirty look. This isn't basketball. You're not the captain here, jock. Then she squared up to him. Ned turned pale. Jessica rolled her eyes, and the emo boy, well, he was busy sketching something and clearly chose to ignore our existence. We'd only been here for less than an hour, and the last thing we needed was a fist fight, so I stepped in between them. Pulling a wry face, Gwen said, "What's this? Little Miss Friendly?" Look, we're all stuck here and we don't know for how long, so let's at least try to be civil. Let's try talking it out. So, I'm Ashley, and I'm here because of a misunderstanding with a gym teacher and a dodgeball. Geez, nobody cares. I can't believe I have to be here with these people. Jessica stood up and left. Pff, I'm with Miss Popular on this one. Ned sneered before he also left. And the emo boy, too. Then Gwen rasped and disappeared. There was only Philip and me left in the room. He was meant to be handsome and stuff. But looking at him now, I didn't think so. Ugh, this awkward silence was insufferable. This was just like that movie, The Breakfast Club, but much worse, and in much longer time. Who on earth had to pack clothes for detention? I had no idea how long I had to stay here for. So I decided to go to bed. I walked into the girls' room to see that both of the beds next to the window were already occupied. Bummer, they'd taken the best spots. I reluctantly got into the only bed left and hoped that tomorrow wouldn't suck as much as today had. The next morning, I woke up to yelling. Huh? I rubbed my eyes and yawned. It was still far too early. I went out into the corridor to see what was going on and saw Jessica and Ned arguing over the apartment's only bathroom. Jessica wanted to apply her makeup while Ned really needed to go. Then Philip watched on and butted in on occasion to say something dumb. Why don't you use some of your nerdy mathematics to solve your problem? The only reason you need to spend so long applying makeup is because you're ugly. Ooh, burn! Philip laughed. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed shut. They rushed over to it and tried opening it to no avail. 10 minutes later, the emo kid stepped out. Jessica screamed at him. How dare you! My personal stuff is still in there. I watched on, wide-eyed. OMG! These people were ridiculous! How was I meant to live with them? In the end, we eventually came to an agreement about the bathroom's rule. It was first come, first serve, but each of us could only have the throne for a max 15 minutes. Being in such a small space with people I barely knew was always going to be problematic, but not having our phones as a distraction made it so much harder. We had one TV, but there's only one lousy channel on it. No one cleaned up, no one seemed to get along. Ugh, seriously? When will this end? All of the constant dirt and arguing was driving me nuts. But then the final straw was this one time when I was washing my face, the cleansing foam accidentally got into my eyes to wipe it out. But to my horror, when I opened my eyes, so I quickly reached for a towel, I saw myself holding someone's sock instead. Yuck! After that, I gathered everyone and threw the sock onto the floor and said, "We need to sort out order, as I can't live like this anymore. It's gross." Jessica snorted. "Who are you to boss around? No one cares what you think." Before I even had a chance to say anything back, Ned piped in that Jessica was just a dumb rich girl who never lifted a finger. Then Gwen jumped up to her feet and started shouting for no reason. Philip gave me this smirky know-it-all look that made me want to scream. Then he actually lobbed a basketball at me, which almost took my head off. Then, ignoring the others, I started shouting at him. The only one who stayed quiet was the emo boy. "You aren't even that pretty. In fact, I've seen more attractive slugs," I heard Ned say to Jessica. That was a bit much, wasn't it? I mean, it was obvious Ned only teases Jessica because he has a huge crush on her. Jessica huffed as she tossed her hair behind her back, then stormed off to her room. Man, this place sucks. At least lunchtime had arrived. So I made myself a delicious-looking burger, then quickly went to the bathroom. When I returned, I couldn't believe it. Philip was taking a bite out of my burger. I screamed at him, but then he shrugged, then said he'd make me a new one. And like a decade later, my replacement lunch finally arrived, and Philip was smiling at me strangely and watched on as I bit into it. Ew! I lifted up the top of the bun to see a raw piece of beetroot. Ugh. I was so fed up with everyone that I went to bed super early that night. Only when I woke up the next day, both Jessica and Gwen burst out laughing at me. I hurried to the bathroom and checked out my face. Oh no. Turns out someone had drawn on my pillow, and now I had ink all over my face. I had to scrub my face for ages to get it off. Then Philip wouldn't quit laughing at me. I knew he was responsible. Ugh! Such a jerk! And on the other hand, we also had the emo kid that I was seriously getting sick of. He never said or did anything. Instead, he just sat there, usually wearing his stompy boots and looking all moody. I mean, why wear those sweaty-looking boots when he's stuck inside? It was about time he spoke up, so I came up with a prank to get him talking. When the emo kid was in the shower, Ned and I filled his beloved boots with mayo. A little later, I heard some loud thump. Then the emo kid did a weird walk across the room with his foot covered in mayo while clutching one of his boots. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. And not gonna lie, I was intimidated by this other side of him. Then out of nowhere, Jessica appeared. She turned to me and shoved my shoulder. "That was too much, don't you think?" "Oh, no, you didn't. I wasn't gonna let someone like her speak to me like that and get away with it." So I struck a defensive pose and glared at her. We ended up in a stare-off when suddenly I felt arms pulling me back. It was Philip. I tried flailing free of his grip, which caused him to lose his balance, and he accidentally elbowed Gwen. "Oh, you're done, Jock!" Soon, Jessica and I were pulling each other's hair, and Gwen and Philip were shoving each other. It was mayhem. "Stop! All of you!" It was the emo kid. He glared at us with rage. "You're acting like immature brats!" Well, that was unexpected, but I guess it worked, as a few seconds later, we started cleaning up the mess we'd made. We knew something needed to change, so at dinner, we all sat around the table and tried to sort things out. The others were all staring down at their food and not talking, so I decided to go first. So, I'm here because I don't always react well to certain situations. I don't know, I guess I find it hard to make friends. I trailed off. Then Ned spoke up. "The only word my mom seems to know nowadays is study, study, study. I feel like all I am to her is a grade. So when I got a B in English Lit, I ripped it up in front of the teacher. That's the story." Jessica flicked back her hair, then said, "Try having all the money you could ever want, but the most neglectful parents ever. I bet they still haven't noticed that I've been stuck here with you losers for days now, just because I told some girl her skirt was hideous. I was doing her a favor. Poof." Then Philip blurted out, "My father wanted me to be strong and manly just like him. I don't want to be like him, but I'm worried I will be, and that I won't be able to do anything about it. So I skipped basketball practice, got into an argument with coach and my dad, and now I'm in the weirdest detention ever. Gwen sneered. Least your dad's around. Mine does month-long disappearing acts. And my mom's dead. Oh, and I'm here because I put paint in some clown's locker. Serves them right for bad-mouthing me. Her words were followed by an intense silence. Awkward. But I felt like I understood everyone a little better now. Oh, but hang on. The emo kid hadn't said anything. Hey, you. I looked at him. So, what's your story? He shrugged, and I didn't think he was going to talk, but then in a quiet voice he said, I'm Stan. I never knew my dad. My mom isn't around, so I live with my grandparents. I'm here because I ignored the principal, but only because I had earphones in. Oh, I muttered out. Look, I'm sorry about your boots. I'll help you clean them if you like. Stan nodded. Jessica was right. I had been a bit harsh on him. Then Ned gave this awkward smile and said, Jessica, I know I've been a jerk to you, but it's only because I like you. Jessica didn't do so much as flinch. She still kept studying her nails. Probably because having boys smitten over her was already a part of her daily routine. Well, I might like someone too. Phil stretched his arms behind his chair. I guess I like winding her up. He looked directly at me. I felt myself blushing, and I had this weird fluttering feeling in my stomach. But why? My heart started racing. Now what was I meant to do? It's me again, Ashley. And yep, you guessed it. I was still stuck in this apartment with these annoying kids. That was definitely the weirdest detention ever. None of us had any idea how long we'd be stuck here. Oh well, at least we weren't starving, as every 3 days a giant bag full of groceries would appear inside the doorway, since we couldn't get out of there. Things had become a little less awkward since the day we'd sat down and opened up to each other. Although Ned had switched from being a jerk towards Jessica to following her around the place like a lovesick puppy. Take this morning, for instance. He held a slice of toast out to her, which he'd cut into the shape of a heart. She rolled her eyes as she pushed the plate away. Poof! Get real, nerd! I don't like you. He took a bite of the toast, then in between chewing said, You'll soon change your mind. I'm Sin 2X and you're Coast 2X. So together, we're one. I had to admit, watching Ned try and fail to win Jessica's heart was amusing. But unfortunately, I had my own guy-shaped issue to deal with. Philip. He wasn't winding me up anymore. Instead, he was being nice to me. He even lent me his hoodie after I spilled jam on mine. This nice version of him would take some getting used to. Now we just needed Gwen and Stan to become a couple, and things would be even more interesting. But they barely look at each other. Lucky them, as Philip was really starting to bug me. Can you believe that he actually sprayed my favorite t-shirt with his aftershave? It stank and made me sneeze. Achoo! So I stormed into the living room where he was telling some lame joke to Ned, chucked my t-shirt at him, then yelled, Stop being weird. It's too much. He just gave me this soppy grin and replied, It's so I'm always on your mind. Ugh. I wasn't in the mood for this, so I returned to my room and sulked there for the rest of the day. Ugh, this apartment was too crazy. I just wanted to go home. My stomach started to rumble, so I reluctantly left the room to grab a snack. What? Jessica was spoon-feeding Philip cereal. Ned was sulking in the corner of the room, and Gwen was mimicking Jessica's actions with Stan, who now had mushed up cereal all over his face. Jeez, Philip thought he was so handsome that he could get any girl he wanted. Well, he sure moved on fast. Fine, I'd show him. I squeezed in between Gwen and Stan and touched his hair. Your hair, Stan. I've never known it is so glossy. I put my hand on my chin and looked at him with adoring eyes. And in my cutest voice, I asked him, Would you like me to make you some French toast? Stan gave me this petrified look, and tried squirming away from me. Then Philip and Jessica walked over, and he frowned at me.
"Come on, Ash. You and the emo? Really?"
Gwen snorted. "Oh yeah, it's better than a pretty doll and a jock. Oh wait, actually, you two are perfect for each other." Stan quietly laughed to himself, then muttered out, "Right, dumb people should be together." Suddenly, Jessica burst into tears. What? Why was she crying? Everyone fell silent and looked at her. "Come on, Jess, he was only kidding." I awkwardly patted her back. Then she blurted out, I've always had a thing for Stan, okay?" "Huh?" Well, none of us were expecting that. Poor Stan looked like he was gonna faint with shock. Jessica must have been burying these feelings deep down for so long. She was the most popular girl with a reputation to live up to, after all. Through sobs, Jessica looked at Stan and continued, "I knew us being here together was my chance to see if you like me. So I agreed to Philip's deal to see if you're jealous." Tears streamed down her face. "But you just think I'm some dumb, pretty doll." She mumbled out an apology to Ned for being insensitive to him, then turned to Stan, sobbed, "I'm not a porcelain doll. I have feelings," and left. Oh wow, I didn't see that coming. I guess I feel kinda bad for her, and also guilty. But hold up. Philip's deal? Oh, so he pulled that out to make me jealous too? That night, we had another meeting. Yawn. This one was as dull as it sounds. Well, until we started discussing the meaning behind this detention. Hey, since when did detentions go on for this long? It's been 2 weeks already. Ned looked concerned. We all agreed. We'd learned how to live in some sort of harmony together, but still, we need to go outside. Also, my family would be worrying, right? There's two, I hope. Then the next morning, Philip was trying to de-jam the air vent in the kitchen when he waved us all over. He pointed up at something small with a tiny red light on it. Ned and he took it down. It was a camera. "It could be a security camera," Jessica said. "My house also has a few inside, in case of intruders or something." Gwen sneered. "Duh, your house is a freaking mansion. Here, there's no need for a security cam." We decided to spread out and look for more cameras. In total, we found 5, all hidden around the place, including in a plant pot and fixed to a picture frame. It was freaky to think there could be more scattered around the place. Ugh. We gathered in the living room to discuss what to do about this, when suddenly the front door opened and in walked the principal and some other man I'd never seen before. Huh? Who was he? Did this mean we could finally go home? The other man started talking. "Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin, and you are the participants in my exciting reality show. Your principal here put you all forward for this, as I wanted kids with 6 varying personalities." Gwen stood up and shouted, "What? Is this for real?" I added, "There's no way my parents would have agreed to this." "They did," the principal grinned. "They signed the documents. They all think you are at training camp." Kevin added, "Keep up the good work, guys. The viewers are loving all this drama and attitude." Jessica screamed out, "You can't do this! It isn't right!" "We'll keep you here for some more time to see how this project goes. Don't worry, you'll all get scholarships after this. That is, as long as you cooperate." We watched as they took away the cameras we'd found. And, yep, you guessed it, they locked the door behind them. Then we gathered in the spot in the kitchen, which didn't have any cameras in it, and whispered about what we should do next. Ned suggested, "I've done my calculations, and if we join all our clothes together, we can climb down from the window." We were about 4 floors up, so guess this was possible. Under Ned's instruction, we all wet our clothes before we joined them, as apparently this would make them less likely to tear. "I'll go," Philip added. "I mean, I'm way stronger than the rest of you, and I'm the fastest.
so I'll reach the cop station in record time, report those jerks, then send help.
So the plan was set, and we all clung onto the end of the clothes rope as Phil climbed down it. It was kinda impressive watching him abseil down the building, and he was like a real-life Spider-Man. When he reached the bottom, we hid the clothes rope in the wardrobe and slid a piece of paper under the apartment door so Philip could find our room again. Now it was a waiting game. We all tried to carry on as normal, as we were aware of the hidden cameras. Suddenly, the door barged open, and in walked the principal, Kevin, and 4 massive dudes. "Oh no!" Jessica frightenedly whispered. Those men instantly started collecting our stuff. When one of them picked up Gwen's hat, she charged at him. "Get off of my stuff, creep!" The man grabbed her around the waist with one arm and pulled her across the room. She thrashed, kicked, and screamed. She might have been big, but she's still a teenage girl, so she was no match for him. Jessica, Ned, and I all clustered together, not knowing what to do. Only Stan seemed to keep his quiet and calm. With a grin on his face, Kevin shouted, "Well, that wasn't very clever now, was it? So we're moving you somewhere new before you're discovered." Right at that moment, Philip ran into her room, followed by some cops. "There they are! It's them! They locked us up in here!" The principal straightened his tie, then in a polite tone said, "Oh, please. This is a misunderstanding. I'm the principal of Xavier Springs High School, and these are the particularly delinquent students who are all in detention. We're administering a special education program for them. And here's their teacher." He pointed over to Kevin. "Liar!" I shouted. "They just made up excuses to punish us and trap us in here. There's hidden cameras and we're on some reality TV show." "Ignore her. She has, mental issues. She'll do anything to get out of detention." Then he pointed at Gwen. "Look, officer, how could we not have special treatment for an aggressive girl like that? Don't you think?" We all shouted and tried to explain, but our words jumbled together. The only one who remained silent was, no surprise, Stan. The cops searched around, but found nothing. They thought we were only unruly teens trying to bail on detention. They were about to leave when Stan calmly walked over to them, pulled out one of the cameras we'd found the other day from his pocket, and passed it to them. Then, Stan, still without any words, pulled out a vintage recorder, pressed the button, and we all heard the whole conversation about TV shows and the principal's threats. Whoa! Nice work, Stan! The cops instantly arrested them, and we were taken back to our families, who all sobbed with joy on our return. So, what came next? Well, my high school got a new principal, and this one hasn't given me detention. Yet. The former principal and Kevin and his whole crew are in serious trouble with the cops. Looks like they might end up in jail. As for the 6 of us, well, we formed an unbreakable friendship. Philip got a sports scholarship, and I'm super proud of him. He also told his dad how he was feeling, and they sorted things out. Ned finally stood up for himself to his parents, and now they're trying to be more understanding. He also has a girlfriend and just won first prize of the state in physics. The nerd. Jessica and Stan are an official couple, and they don't care what other people think of them. They're actually super cute together. But shush! Don't tell them I said that. Gwen decided to leave this town and go study at an all-girls boarding school. She just started dating a girl there named Claire. She sounds really happy. We're all glad to hear. So, I guess Miss Tough Cookie has a soft side after all. And me? Well, I went from a lonely and awkward girl to having 5 unlikely best friends and a wonderful boyfriend. Yep, I'm now with Philip. Guess being in detention wasn't so bad after all. Cheers!
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time, I was 21. I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said,
"Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time."
I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said,
"Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard."
OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. "I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message?" The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet. And then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time, I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now. Maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel. And he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noted someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying, "We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it." Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise." Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away. And ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience, because I've never been happier.
I'd just finished my shift and was walking out of the coffee shop to head home when I suddenly heard a voice say, "Hi, are you Catherine Mill?" Ugh, what else? I'm exhausted already. I reluctantly turned around to a view that almost made me leap out of my skin. Standing in front of me was a girl with a face exactly like mine. Who are you?" I stammered. I felt like I was seeing things. She smiled at me and said, "I'm Tracy. Is this wallet yours?" Oh, wow, you found it! I dropped it at the Seattle Mariners baseball game. I never thought I'd see it again. That's right. We met there. Then Tracy took out a cap and put it on. Hang on. That hat seemed so familiar. And so did that smile. Are you the one I accidentally bumped into at the stadium? That must have been when I dropped my wallet. I was in such a hurry to get to my seat that I'd gone crashing into Tracy. At the time, she was wearing that cap, so all I saw was her smile. But now seeing her standing here, it was like looking in the mirror. I kept staring at her as she said, "Yep, that was me. In fact, I came to find you not just to return your wallet, but because I need a favor. Can we chat for a sec?" Sure. Let's go back inside the cafe." What favor could she possibly want? Well, I was about to find out. "Catherine, I'm just going to say it outright. We have something in common, don't we?" I hesitated to speak up, but I knew exactly what she was talking about. She then continued, "I mean, look at us. You're basically my doppelganger, which brings me to this favor to ask for. Kathy, I was hoping you'd impersonate me. I'll pay you, of course. I'll pay you a lot." Before I could even reply, Tracy handed me an envelope and showed me a photo of some very posh-looking people. "This is my family," she said. Wait, what? Turns out they were royals, or something close to. Her grandfather had been an earl in the UK, and then they'd moved over here to Washington. They're what you'd call an aristocratic family. So, yep, mega wealthy. Must be nice, I thought. However, it was suffocating Tracy, and that all of the duties that came with being from a family of nobility drove her crazy. Plus, one other little problem. She was in love with a guy that her family definitely wouldn't approve of, because he came from a normal family. Her parents had arranged for her to marry the son of one of the country's richest CEOs. And so that's what led us to now. She wanted to hire me to pretend to be her, so that she could be with her lover boy without troubles. I was stunned. "What if someone finds out?" I muttered, and shoved the envelope back into her hands, saying that it was too much money. But Tracy just laughed. "Oh, this is just the initial payment. You'll receive so much more. Please, I'm begging you. Think about it." Then she looked at me with proper sadness in her eyes. I really did feel sorry for her, but I needed some time. And it would be better to get my mom's opinion on this first. Ever since I'd been a little girl, I'd always talked things through with her. She was the only family I had, and the only one I could trust and rely on. Mom would know what to do. When I got home, I found my mom waiting for me at the table. We ate dinner together in silence, as I could barely focus. She knew something was up right away. "Honey, what happened at work?" I hesitated, then handed her the photo of Tracy's family. My mom, as you can guess, was shocked to see how much Tracy looked like me, and so I told her what had gone down earlier. I explained that she offered me a ton of money to impersonate her, but that it felt risky. I'd assumed my mom would be dead set against it, but what she said surprised me. That poor girl. Indeed, how people always say it's not as fun as it looks being too wealthy. But hey, a bit of extra money in your pocket couldn't hurt. I mean, you could use it to pay for your vocal training. And at the same time, you'd help Tracy, so that she can be with her true love. Yeah, becoming a singer had been a lifelong dream of mine, but because of money struggles, I'd had to put that aside. Mom's right. This was my chance. I had to take it. So I called Tracy to seal the deal. She was over the moon about it, and we arranged to meet the next day to start preparing. I thought I'd just have to learn all of her favorite things and maybe borrow some of her clothes so that I didn't get caught out. But no, there was a whole lot more to it than that. For starters, I had to take etiquette classes. Can you even believe? That first day, I had lessons on how to walk properly. They legitimately did put books on my head to improve my posture. And then came the elocution lessons to teach me how to speak more clearly. Seriously, was this Princess Diaries or what? But the best part, though, was her wardrobe. Wow, Her outfits were to die for. Now that's what gave me the urge to dive into the royal life now. Everything was going well until we sat down to go through all of her likes and dislikes. Her dislikes were about a mile long. Oh man, Tracy was one fussy girl. I mean, who didn't like pizza? I basically lived off the stuff. Plus, she was vegan, gluten-free, and had a nut allergy. What did she even eat? But despite that, we got through the week. Every morning I had my etiquette classes, which now were easy peasy. I could totally pull it off as a high society girl. And then in the afternoons, I hung with Tracy and learned everything I could about her. By the end of the week, we got all things set and ready for the swap. So Tracy and I went out to celebrate. "Catherine, look at our faces," she said while squinting her eyes. I took a closer look at the phone screen and gotta admit, despite being pretty identical, there were still some differences between us. Sure, her cheekbones were more prominent and her nose was slightly upturned, but with a bit of makeup, I could fix that, right? Tracy wasn't convinced though. "Listen, I think you're going to need to get plastic surgery." Wait, I wasn't ready for any of that. But on second thought, I guess that would be all right, as it'd only make me prettier, which would totally help with my singing career. So I went under the knife. Not only my nose and cheekbones were fixed, but they also added a birthmark to my shoulder to match the one Tracy had. I looked like an Egyptian mummy with all my bandages on, coming out of the operating room. But when the day came to remove them, I was amazed. Just a little touch-up could make me look this incredible. I twirled around in front of the mirror in one of Tracy's glitzy dresses and just smiled. We were totally going to pull this off. Tracy was even more excited than me. She turned to me and said, "Ready for the family party?" Oh, wow. So my first mission had arrived already. I nervously looked at Tracy, and she just giggled and said, "Oh, don't be nervous. It's just my cousin's baby's first birthday party. No big deal. Although Thomas's whole family will be there. That's the family I'm meant to marry into." Okay, now I was even more worried. Tracy told me to simply do what I learned in the classes. As for Thomas, she instructed me to just ignore him, as that's what she usually did. He was used to the cold shoulder. Well, the moment I arrived at the party, I was already so overwhelmed. I couldn't believe my eyes. Her cousin's house was basically a palace with butlers and a grand staircase as you entered, just like in the movies. I almost had to pinch myself that I was even there. As I walked in, one of the butlers asked me to follow him through to the banquet hall. A banquet hall? How insane! There were crystal chandeliers hanging from every part of the ceiling, and the room looked like it was literally made from gold. I noticed Tracy's dad standing in the middle of the room with a young couple and a baby. That would be Tracy's cousin, and the baby was obviously the reason this insane party had been thrown. I took a deep breath, gathered myself, and walked towards them in the way my etiquette teacher had taught me. I greeted them casually, and it seemed no one sensed anything weird. Not even Tracy's dad. However, I was still afraid someone would realize. So I grabbed a glass of wine and went to stand in the corner just to be safe. While I was fiddling with the glass and trying not to make eye contact with anyone, a guy came up to me and clinked my glass. Oh boy! The coolest, most handsome guy ever was standing there grinning at me. I smiled back at him politely, trying not to blush, and then I realized, wasn't he
Thomas and Tracy, the happy couple?
Suddenly, I heard Tracy's dad from a few feet away, speaking towards us.
"You two look exquisite together. Be good to him now, Tracy, won't you?"
Yep, it's Thomas, the fiancé that Tracy doesn't like at all. Okay, so I need to act cold towards him, otherwise I'll ruin everything for Tracy. But heck, he was just so good looking. I quickly walked away towards the dessert table and started stuffing my face with some almond cookies, anything to distract myself from Thomas. As I picked up a third one, I heard Thomas scream, and the next moment he was running over to me shouting,
"Tracy, put it down! There are nuts in those!"
I dropped the cookie in shock.
Right. I was supposed to be allergic to these delicious snacks. Totally forgot that. Gosh, I turned around to see all eyes were on me. This was a disaster. I was like a deer in the headlights. Didn't know what else to do. I pretended to faint. Thomas immediately carried me somewhere while others called the family doctor. I only took a peek when I felt like I was let down on a bed. And wow, even their guest room is gorgeous. Anyway, the doctor did some quick checkup and said I was okay. Well, obviously. Then Thomas rushed over, holding my hand and kept saying, "Thank God you're okay, baby." Really? How come Tracy didn't like him? He was so sweet. He was looking at me so lovingly. Wait, at Tracy, actually. Oh boy, this was getting weird. Guess I have started off this mission on the wrong foot. But having that first incident actually helped me become more careful, so I've been getting better and better at playing Tracy. I was like a secret agent that would be summoned by duty at any sec. Sometimes you'd find me as a princess, other times I'd be waiting tables. My life was getting busier, but much more fun in some senses. Then one day, Tracy suddenly appeared at my door, looking all loved up. How strange it was. Usually she only contacted me over the phone. Then she said, "Kathy, I have a big mission for you." As she sat down, she put a bulging envelope on the table and said, "Kathy, sweetie, I need a big favor this time. So, here's the thing. Me and Arnold are going to Asia for a month, and, I was wondering if you could maybe move into my house and cover for me?" I was shocked. A month? That's quite a long time. I mean, surely I'll get caught. Oh, I'm not sure, Tracy. I tried to avoid her eye contact, but she kept begging and looking like she was about to cry. Oh, God. What should I do? Guys, please give me some advice. And stay tuned. I'll be back with part 2 to tell you how things go down. Why do I have uneasy feelings about all this?
"I want to meet Mr. Garcia. It's important," I told the receptionist. She looked at me confused and said, "Sorry, but no one under that name works here." "What? But he's the company director." The receptionist gave me this bewildered look, then firmly said, "I'm sorry, but no one under that name works in this company. Maybe you've got the wrong building." Fine. If she wouldn't help me, then I'd find him myself. "Miss, wait! You're not authorized to go there!" Unfortunately, I didn't get very far before 2 guards raced over and pulled me away. As I tried struggling free, I yelled out, "This is ridiculous! I'm your director's girlfriend!" Suddenly, a smart-looking man appeared in front of me and calmly said, "Madam, are you looking for Austin Garcia?" "Yes," I nodded. The man sighed, then continued, "Austin did work here, but I fired him months ago. I have no place for someone with such lazy, carefree attitude in my company." I stared at this man open-mouthed. Oh no. So he was the director, not Austin. So, my boyfriend had been lying to me from the start? When the guards led me out of the building, I saw people gawping at me, and I overheard one of them say, "Oh my God, another gullible girl got scammed?" This couldn't be happening to me. Austin was my super successful, rich and handsome boyfriend. There must have been some mistake. He couldn't possibly have scammed me. Could he? I was showing my housemate Sarah the amazing designer bag Austin bought me when he walked into the room and slouched onto the couch. Okay, so what was with his glum look? "Babe, it's just that my company has this big project on. I invested $100,000 already, with a 5 times return expected by the end of the year." Wow, what a huge project. I felt so proud to have such a perfect boyfriend. But then he lowered his voice. "Yeah, looks like I'm gonna have to bail on it." I widened my eyes and asked, "Why? What's up?" "I need to contribute another $50,000 by the end of the week." but I'm still 10,000 short. I blurted out, I can help. He shook his head. Babe, I can't expect you to do that. Besides, where would you find that amount of money from at such short notice?
I'll borrow it from my friends or something. Don't you believe your girlfriend can do it?
I winked at him. He kissed my forehead and then with a huge smile on his face, told me I was the best girlfriend ever. After I counted up my savings and student loan, I was still a few thousand short. So, I told a couple of my friends that my parents had been in an accident and I needed money urgently to pay for their hospital fees. I know lying was lame, but I'd pay them back soon, so what would it matter, right? But then a week after I'd given Austin the money, he showed up at my house looking completely bummed out. He told me he'd met an unexpected problem and now he needed another $15,000, else he'd lose everything. I wanted to help him, but I had no one left to borrow money from. I thought he'd be understanding, but instead he just said, You can borrow money from a loan shark. Then in a month, we can pay it back. I gave him a confused look and asked him why he didn't get the loan himself. He stroked my hair and in a soothing voice said, I would if I could, Hannah, but you're a student, so your interest rates will be much lower than mine. That made sense. Plus, we were going to be together forever anyway. So what did it matter who took the loan out? So that same day, I borrowed the rest of the money from a loan shark and handed it over to Austin. Hannah! A voice shouted, which startled me from my thoughts. Hannah, give me back my money. I need it urgently. My friend Rachel glared at me. I felt so flustered as I blurted out, Soon! A few days, I promise. She rolled her eyes at me. Yeah, whatever. Poof! I thought you had a rich boyfriend, right? Why don't you ask him to help you out? I forced a smile and repeatedly told her I'd pay her back soon. This was so embarrassing, and now my friend hated me. Ugh! It was all that jerk Austin's fault. The truth was that as soon as I handed him the money, well, he disappeared. His online accounts, number, everything. All gone. I even found out that the house he claimed to be his was actually just some Airbnb rental. Oh, and the designer bag he bought me? Fake! The next day, I was walking to my lecture when I heard two girls talking to each other. Hannah owes people loads of money, but won't pay it back. Isn't she always boasting about having a boyfriend? I lowered my head and hurried past them. This was so humiliating. I needed to figure out a way of finding that jerk Austin and making him give me my money back. Oh, who could that be? Maybe it was Austin with a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. I ran to the door and opened it. Oh, it's just some strange girl. Where is Austin? Tell him to come out here now, she yelled. And you are? His victim. He tricked me into giving him all of my savings. She pushed past me and stormed inside. Austin, stop hiding from me and come out! I pulled the girl's arm and asked, Hold up, he also tricked you? She looked at me with wide eyes. Oh gosh, Austin's such a pro scammer. After that, we sat down and she explained everything. Turns out she's called Leah, and Austin scammed her out of $50,000. OMG, that was so much money! Austin is a real jerk. Suddenly, my housemate Sarah and her boyfriend Weston walked in. Hey, look! I won this Tales of Suspense Volume 39 in the horse race bet the other day. You know, it's super rare. Weston was so excited showing Sarah his new precious comic book, while I forced a smile at them both, then quickly dragged Leah up to my room. There's no way I wanted Sarah knowing that I'd been scammed. Entering my room, Leah suddenly said, Hey, do you want your money back? I nodded. Of course I do, but now I don't even know where he is. She gave me this sly smile as she told me how Austin adored the Marvel Universe, and that comic Weston had could be used to lure him in. So we went downstairs, waited for Sarah to go into the other room,
Then we asked Weston for his help. At first, he refused, but then we offered to split the money with him 3 ways. Eventually, Weston agreed, and so, game on! Starting off, Weston posted it on a comic book marketplace for half the price it was worth. Only $150,000! Unsurprisingly, it wasn't long before that snake Austin slithered into his messages. Great! We arrived at the meeting spot super early and hid behind a bush. 30 minutes later, and Austin still hadn't shown up, and I had a dead arm. Ouch! I whispered to Leah, "Do you think our plan was leaked?" She grabbed my shoulder and shushed me. Austin had arrived. He took ages to check the book, really carefully. When they finished the exchange, I jumped out of the bush and shouted, "Austin, there you are! Where's my money?" His eyes widened in terror, and he quickly tried to run off the other way, but Leah jumped out in front of him. She sneered and rolled up her sleeves, stepping towards him. "There is nowhere for you to run, jerk!" Austin was terrified and stepped back. Then I ran up behind him and snatched the comic out of his hand. "Girls, look! He turned pale and immediately turned and hurried away. He even lost a shoe en route, but he didn't dare to stop to pick it up. It was so hilarious watching him hobble off. Thank you so much, Leah. It felt so good to get revenge. Anytime. We clinked our glasses together. Girl power and all. Ugh, my head hurts so bad. Where's Leah? I guess she must have gone home. I went over to my closet. Where's the backpack with my money in it? I frantically turned my room upside down looking for it. Could it be? I called Leah, but there was no answer. That was it. Leah and Austin were definitely the same. Why did I have to be such a gullible idiot? There was a loud banging on the door, so I opened it. 2 huge guys were standing there.
"Hey, beautiful. Pay us back soon, or else."
Then they left. I freaked out, not knowing what to do. Find Leah and Austin? It's futile. I know it. So I started working like crazy. I delivered newspapers and milk in the mornings, then waitressed most evenings. I was so exhausted, but I had to find a way to pay off my debt before I drowned in it. Then one morning, Sarah came downstairs to find me asleep, face down on my piece of toast. She gently shook me awake, then told me she'd got me a paid intern job at her uncle's hospital. Yay! Thanks, Sarah. You're the best. The first day at my new job went well, so I decided to reward myself with a bagel and hot chocolate in the canteen. That's when I walked straight past her. Leah! She spotted me, too, and ran off, but I chased her into a dead end. Where's my money? I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry, she sobbed out. Then she told me how the night that we'd been celebrating, she'd received some bad news. Her brother was in an accident and needed emergency surgery. Panicked, she took the money for his hospital bills. Are you tricking me? This is 100% true. She wiped at her tears. Maybe I felt a little bit sorry for her. But no, what she did wasn't cool. Besides, she could be lying to me. I mean, I did also use the ill relative's excuse to get money off my friends. So I dragged her to reception to check. Turns out she's telling the truth. Her brother is in a coma and the bills are obviously very expensive. What Leah did sucks, but she's all her brother has. So I guess I can kinda understand why she did that. So it looks like I've got to continue working my butt off for now. That weekend, I was about to leave for work when I opened the door to see those thugs back again. They shoved past me and started picking up valuables. I shouted at them to stop and that I'd get their money to them soon, but they didn't listen to me. Then they picked up Sarah's laptop. Oh no! Right at that moment, Leah showed up and demanded they stop right now. Then she proceeded to pay them what I owed them. Huh? What? How did she have the money? Well, it turns out Leah's brother woke up from his coma. They talked, and she found out his specific research had just won first prize in a nationwide competition. So he gave her the prize money and told her to pay off my debt. I was so ecstatic. I flung my arms around her and kept on saying thank you. Now I was debt-free. Phew! I could finally pay my friends back and put all of this behind me. Huh? What was that? We both looked outside. Isn't that Austin? But why does he look so frazzled? Oh, turns out 5 angry-looking girls are chasing after him. I looked at Leah, then we both burst out laughing. And that, guys, is karma.